as we roll into the third hour of Blenheim, 2 p.m. What's happening? Well, at the strong points on the two flanks and over here at Oberglau, not much. Oberglau is, of course, being largely ignored and bypassed, but Lützingen and Blenheim itself are both wings that could actually be fought over, but the fighting that's happening is largely creating a stasis situation. The only real problem is the French dragoons here are causing issues. Is this the unit? Yeah, this is the unit. I probably should have put these down as dismounted dragoons. They were weaker, and I was like, Cav will be useful. It'll be on the flank. It'll help protect. Yeah, it's not really. It's Cav is too easy to push around. They should be dismounted. Ideally, I would have these guys dismounted as well, but I do not have a unit for them. Okay. Outside of that, here, the Allies had pushed quite far with their cav. Looked like they were doing, well, I mean, there had been a counterattack to begin with, and they shoved it back. It looked like it was going pretty successfully, but now there's this sort of vainglorious attack by Montmain. And over here, a bunch of infantry is basically chasing the French cav back and creating disruptions behind the initial lines that the French were holding. The cav is very easy for the infantry to shove around or to scare away or whatever you want to call it. And that causes everything behind it to just become a disordered mess as it turns around and counter marches. We got people facing in the wrong direction and everything. Casualties. Here's the full brigades that are gone, basically. You can see a lot more French gone than Allies. And you can also kind of see it here where some of the French, the wings that I pointed out here and here, yeah, those are beginning to look a little sparse, whereas there's nothing looking sparse on the Allied side except this, which isn't involved in the battle. It's just sitting there. It's a bunch of cav. They can't do a damn thing. But they are connecting the two wings of the army, so I guess they're doing what they're supposed to. Another round of artillery fire. I think the French lost their last gun. They can't find any more. They may have somebody buried under something, but I don't think so. It was the gun up here. So no need to go chase that down. And again, unless I can keep a contiguous line, I don't feel like I can, spread the sector out necessarily, right? Or something like a contiguous line. And see, limbered this gun up instead of firing it this time, got an effect here, and that's about it. But unlimbered this, and now I've got a fair number of guns in place there. I watched somebody else doing a playthrough, and then somebody who did a review of the game, just to try to get a feel for what else is going on. Since I was posting my video, I noticed there were a couple other things up there, and I'm like, okay, I'm in the mood. I don't often do much. I kind of skimmed through it. The playthrough, I wasn't really catching too much, but he was definitely having issues going on through it. Not as much as I am. I don't know. The review, it felt to me like he must have been playing a different game. I mean, he's got praise for almost everything in this. And I don't know. Yeah, and they were different people, so I just don't know. All right, let's start doing the command chart and seeing what goes on over there. But yeah, What am I thinking? I know there's something on my mind that I wanted to get out, but I don't know what it is. It may be like just a dumb joke or something from life, so I don't know. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I looked up more on this. I don't know if I said this before, but more on the situation with the Clash of Sovereigns. It doesn't look like I paid anything anytime recently for that. I paid $1 less than the price that they're claiming for an 18xx game. And it's not marked, it's still marked as, you know, not yet shipped or something like that. But I got to tell you, I've got things that have been sent to me that are marked that way. So I'm hoping that it's that. And that I don't have to deal with whatever it is, having to contact them and whatever, and say, look, I don't know what's going on, but because I mean, there's no way a P500 order for Clash of Sovereigns should be coming to me now, right? It's like been about a year since apparently, since it was billed, and pretty close to that since I must have gotten it, right? They generally bill you within a month or so of when they send stuff. This time, not only are there some holes that I wanted to start filling, but more on each side, but also I got successes. So I got an infantry coming over into here. I'm committing another cav unit forward to try to stave off the problem, match these guys in their lone charge out there. Over here, well, Silly doesn't count. He's still the support line and in charge. I would love to start getting guys here, but I'm only allowed to do one commitment per wing, so I am committing a cav unit. I don't know which one. Probably this Brogley here, to try to push forward, and that's in between these. So this little force up here, way up there, is still kind of holding further forward than everyone else. Didn't get. I wanted to shift this infantry as well. That becomes harder once this one's already been apparent that it's shifting, I guess. Here, I didn't see anything I would want to do. Nor here. And then the Allies also succeeded in a couple of cases, committing an extra cav to the line. This one here, mainly to help protect against the situation there. I feel like some space is beginning to develop there. But that's cav rather than infantry. So, you know, it's not really going to make a big aggressive difference, but the idea is to put something in the way and protect the flank here if possible. And then here, hey, my cav unit routed, I got to throw another one into play. So, yeah. Otherwise, I'm not really gaining much advantage over the advances I'm getting. And that'll get me to the brigade movement. Let's take a look at charges. We still have one French in charge orders, but the Allies are going to go first. It's got to be about 4 a.m. It had to be about 4 a.m. when I came up here. It's probably about 4:15, 4:20 now. Just to give you an idea. I'm sleeping a couple hours, waking up, whatever. I don't know if it's like the oddness of the feelings in my back. It's not really pain, it's like itchy and stuff like that. Or if it's just, I don't know, something else. I opened up with both sides doing this wing for whatever reason. Fugger went first, got into dress ranks. That allowed him to protect his cav, whatever. Hey, you know, he could have continued charging and hit in front of him, whatever. This guy couldn't have, though, because he was disordered. But the rest would have moved forward and struck. but I wanted to get into dress ranks. I got away with that. This unit, the unit next to him also went and dress ranks and repaired its situation. It would have been unable to do any kind of charge or anything, thereby just thrown into movement, and would have had to try to find a place where it could sit. Oh, these guys didn't go. These guys had to go. This was dress ranks, right? I think I have to go here in order to have a contiguous line. That would have been behind this unit. No, I couldn't do a contiguous line, could I? What the hell is going on? I'm trying to think what's happening. Fuck. So two of the units were up there. I don't know. I'm just going to leave it as it is because I know I fucked something up because I thought there were only 2 units, not 3. Which means this had to be here. Now this got pushed aside from here. So we were probably like this, I'm guessing, which would mean the next thing that happened, which was these guys who tried to dress ranks and couldn't, made an attack. That scares the cav. That would work like that. Okay. So that position still works out. So yeah, these guys could not get out of their charge situation, and ended up attacking there, scaring a cav off, no biggie. Firefight here was already in place. And then I attacked this guy. This guy had first fire, but I got an excellent die roll of 0 and ended up driving him back a hex, which doesn't do a lot in the villages, right? You really, as long as there's enough troops in the village to have a couple of units per hex, retreats are very easy and everything because of the different facing that's in play there. And then the final unit that did something was Fink, who managed to get into dress ranks, who managed to get into march rather than dress ranks. Why did I do that? Because from dress ranks into charge is harder. So I simply shifted the units that were front and back. I don't have anybody in firefights or anything like that. I left this one because he's actually more effective. If I have to do first fire against cav here, that's no good. And this is cav as well, so I probably actually want to stay this way. I don't want to do first fire against cav. I just want to push the cav back. Now, since I'm not advancing or anything, it's not really doing shit. It's just the cav bounces, the cav moves up, the cav moves back, cav moves up, cav moves back. There's not much I can do to the cav with the infantry as it stands. Because the only time infantry can really hit cav is if the unit is already disordered or something like that, or can't retreat. Otherwise, it just kind of, performs its screening functionality without any problem. And yeah, no harm can really be accomplished there. But at least here, I'm going to get first fire against that, and that's kind of the best thing. Okay, we'll go on to the main line of the Allied units then. Shit, I forgot. The French actually have another unit under charge. The silly unit. This guy managed dress ranks, but this guy, I forgot him completely. That silly cav. We'll talk about that, and the other thing that I did, which was this, which I did before that actually. The silly cav failed to get into dress ranks, but it's got nowhere to go. I could move forward a hex or something. Guess that doesn't really hurt. But it might. I don't know. Forward hex. But yeah, it doesn't really do me any good. But the other unit was over here, the Wilke unit. There were two, it was unable to dress ranks. One came forward, got locked in another firefight, at bad odds, so it's not that terrible. The other one attacked one of the cav and disordered it. That cav is now available to be killed if it can't fix itself. And no harm comes to the infantry. This is one of those situations where the infantry can beat up on the cav because they're blocked off from their free retreat. Sounds like it's raining again. Well, I had one pretty day that I didn't go outside for. I mean, I buried some garbage. Something horrible has happened, and it's all my fault. I have a Holstein back here with the Palant units. And just to be sure, I checked to see if it wasn't a fuck-up. This is what, and it isn't. This is my fuck-up, not a counter fuck-up. Given that there are counter fuck-ups in the game. But this is a case where, look, same color, same band, same wing, same line. They weren't even next to each other, and they ended up somehow blurring into the wrong place. I don't know what the fuck to do about it. I think what I'll do, this was a 3 unit. I think I'll say these Prussians here somehow were up here instead and took the hit, thereby keeping the same situation, and I'll have this back here or something. But, you know, it's just, when things look too much alike, here the names weren't similar at least, but when things look too much alike and they're close to each other, and you're relying on things like color bands and stuff to decide what's what, yeah, you're gonna get fuck-ups, man. Especially when, hey look, here's another Holstein Beck with a gray color. What the fuck's up with that? And Palanque with a pale blue. It's gotta have something to do with the uniform colors as opposed to being anything useful to the player. And I thought I saw something about that. That's just fucking annoying when it comes down to it, because most of them are the same color, and then, yeah. And fucking hell again, these are cav, and I treated them not as. I just cannot see the difference. Which means all these casualties that I put in play don't take place, and instead this cav has to retreat, which it can do with no problem. I also retreated a cav over on this side with this one. Again, not getting any advances off that, which means the cav can just bounce right back in there, if it so desires. It's no big deal. Here we've actually, no, this is a different unit. And it's infantry. And again, you know, I have to spend, I don't know what, a tenth of a second, a half a second, whatever, some amount of time to differentiate between those two things. That is far too long for being able to process the game properly. It just, my eyesight is just not making the difference. My eyesight-brain combination is not noting the differential easily enough. And then Holstein Beck advances, drives some of this cav back a little bit more again. Just driving the cav back is doing absolutely nothing except they're crossing the boundary, which I may have to designate that the boundary has moved or something, I don't know. But they're just driving back the boundary, at least for one side, right? Or they're just driving back the cav and compacting it with these other units and just causing problems for any kind of defense that I intend to make. You do not want cav trying to defend in front of infantry. You know, it's too easy to shove them around. Sure, they can bounce back in, but they can't really. I mean, can they? I don't know. I guess they can. And this, what, the Hurlville, manages to destroy, using first fire, the silly cav here. We also forced a couple of units back, but we destroyed the silly cav. A two-unit brigade isn't going to have a high morale and ended up routing. That's what we got here. except I cheated. Moved to 4 instead of 2. So that was here and here, 1, 2 instead. Got used to moving 4 at the end of the turn, and I don't know why I'm messing shit up. I got one more unit in charge, that's this. I probably don't want them to continue charging. If they do, they'll slam into this, which may not be that terrible. They'll take the first fires off of them, but they'll get killed by it. Oh no, they're not cav. They're infantry. God damn, can't fucking tell. I really can't. Like, it looks like cav to me. Maybe because of the greater depth, whatever. It just looks like cav as pictured. So that would be infantry versus infantry. That doesn't sound good, and I've got hits against them. This is a depth marker, not a hit. Might be worth trying to rally them while they're out there. Let's give it a try. So we're going charge into dress ranks, which is 4. We got no problems, and we got 1 for Churchill there. At some point or another, I really ought to commit him to something. So that would be 5. And we get to dress ranks. And that's not going to be too exciting. This guy's going to recover. Oh. I'll move him forward. Leave the other guy there. And say that's good, I guess. And I'm wiped out. I think I did all the charges. I don't know. I don't know if I want to. I don't really have any raid I want to do, but that's going to put it on the French for the move order stuff. And fuck, man. Yeah. All right. Well, we're at the point of, I guess, the big passes, right? Where I'm flipping units over and doing very, very little with most of them. Now, some of them are frontline units that I know what I want to do with, and I just find them and do that. I don't actually think that there's any real desire to pass right now. This second front here, there's some reason to delay there. I've got a couple of units that are in movement orders on this sector, or wing of the front. It feels like a sector to me. I mean, wings, left, right, center, right? You don't have 5 wings to an army, man. It's just the wrong term for me. I can't get used to it. So, you know, there's some reason to kind of drag your feet and not do those. But for the most part, everywhere else, here, the French are going to go before whatever's left of the Allies. Here, same thing, the French are going to go. There aren't any left for the Allies. Yeah, so whatever. There was something I wanted to say. Damn it. I didn't pick up the camera to say that. That's just, you know, giving you the, hey, what's going on, you know? This unit's in the midst of its transfer. It didn't make it. Ideally, I would have moved these guys who are already over there, but they would have been harder to shift from the support line to the support line. Shifting something from the reserve to the reserve gave me a bonus, so I rolled for that. That means that has to go. And then later, these are going to shift over and take a position that's essentially where this other unit was. It's an annoying situation. They're going to be holding the same ground and whatnot. It's just, that's, you know, they were set up in that way. And actually, you might make an argument that these guys, so I had these guys set up over here on the river line, I think. Maybe I had them in the back line. I don't know. Anyway. Essentially, they're going to be replacing the position that these guys were holding. So I don't really feel like, you know, this was expressing what I had on the field, and that may be where the conflict is coming up. But it worked out that way when I set up. I guess that's it. I don't know. I can tell you what happened here, which is nothing. They failed to get into their dress ranks, which they would have liked to have repaired some damage. Mercy, the unit came in behind to fill in because retreating in villages is easy, so no real reason to worry about the problems there. It does feel a little weird to me, and I think I've mentioned this back in the other battle, which is that, like, so units that are in the villages aren't really in linear formation anymore. They're in, defend the village formation or whatever. But they still are impacted by the same flanking rules that take place. Now that makes sense that, like, if you're attacked in the flank, it would be a problem. But the coverage of flanks and whatnot, having a backup unit can cover your flank for the other part. And it's the other part that I kind of question, whether or not you need to be anchored when you're in a village or something. I don't know. I certainly don't mind it. It's just the way the modifiers, etc. are there. One of the reviewers had said that this gave them everything they needed to look up, everything they needed for in the rules. I do not find that to be the case. It may be because I cannot internalize, like, there's things that I find ambiguous, and the developer even agrees with me that there are things that are poorly written in the sense, but also things that failed to make it, there. And this does not do anything to even address those. Also, there's so much that I have to continually look up to see, hey, how does this, how does the linear compliance actually work? And that's mostly not here. This gives you a lot of the simple stuff. The only thing that I find actually terribly useful, okay, dress ranks. If I want to know what dress ranks does, that's here. It is actually all here. But both march and charge, the full effects of those, not really. I mean, march is okay. It gives you kind of the most important piece. Charge absolutely is missing things that I constantly have to look up with charge. But what is useful is what we have here with the priorities chart. I do often have to flip to that. So if I can remember that that's on here, that'll help. Other than that, though, I don't find that I need anything that's on here. The things that I need in the rules are where I'm like, how is that worded again? How does that actually work according to the rules? And I may actually, by having to refer to the rules so many times, be coming up with different interpretations on different times. There you have the problem with ambiguity and whatnot. And honestly, if I had a strong feeling about how things should be, I would apply that and stop looking things up. And I'm trying to get away from looking things up to try to, but it's very hard when you feel like, wait a minute, isn't there something there? And I found some things there, like, this is not at all what I intended to do. I'm just, I keep going off on the same shit, right? But like the this activation priority aspect here, no. Is it activation? No, I know that. Right? No, this is actually important. This isn't actually the priority of activation. This is the priority of action within an activation. So it's mistitled, and that's why it confused me, but like what you have to, the order of compliance. But that doesn't fit everything else. So for example, when it says you have to be compliant with the command display, the brigade integrity, and finally order compliance, that doesn't seem to be the case with charge. Right? Like, but maybe, if it is, you would just like be like, okay, I'm under a charge order, but I can't charge. So like Silly wouldn't have done his silly thing. But I actually think he should. I agree with the interpretation that I read that puts charge as absolutely vital. And here's the thing. The way that brigade integrity and command display integrity are written, it doesn't really, like, it doesn't preclude you from doing the charge, right? So like the thing that I did with the Silly Brigade, I love the name, I'm sorry. I'm sure it's pronounced different in French. But the thing that I did with them was absolutely in compliance with the way that the integrity rules are written that this refers to. But it's not in the spirit of this, which is that I should be making sure that my command display, that the position on the map reflects the command display. That should be the first thing that I focus on, right? That's what reading this rule says to me. And then I should insist that the brigade has integrity. It's all connected together. And finally, within all that, I comply with the orders. But the actual meaning in the rules of complying with command display isn't that you have to be in that exact position, right? It's that if you're not in that position, you devolve into something else. So for example, when Silly was up forward, he was no longer compliant, and then he had to slip into, even though he was in charge order, he had to act as if he was in move order and resolve that issue. That's the way that's worded. Brigade integrity, similar kind of weirdness, although the brigade integrity, it doesn't require that you keep your brigade together. It just requires that you keep 2 units with your brigade together. But you can get in a lot of trouble. So like you couldn't have something like that unit that was loose, this Holstein Beck that was over here. You couldn't have had 2 units of that over here, then some Palant, and then some more Holstein Beck. You couldn't do that, but you could have Holstein Beck, a gap, more Holstein Beck. Anyway. Luckily I put the dice there because otherwise I'd be completely lost. One of my viewers mentioned part of the reason I'm having a problem is I'm trying to be strict with the rules or something. That's not in my character, right? And that a lot of people just kind of read the rules once and try to apply them. I'm usually that kind of person. And I felt like, wow, I was ready to jump in and do that with this game. And things like this just made sense. But I have memories of things that didn't quite align. And I had to hunt those down and find, hey, am I misunderstanding this? You know, what's going on, whatever. And as I found those and found where I feel like, yeah, something feels wrong here, what happens for me is I'm not trying to strictly interpret the rules as written, not by any means. I don't think that can be done, you know, when it's already clear that there's a errata that has not been released yet, right? A year out, right? It really is, I think. I don't know. Not a year out, but it's several months, 6 months or something out. I expected the game to be in much better shape by the time I got to it. It's not like I just opened up the box from my pre-order and I'm like, ooh, I have to do this. I felt that way, but I was in the middle of something else for several months. No, it's more that I'm trying to interpret what the designer's intent is and trying to stick as closely to his wording and come up with something that makes sense. And I do feel actually that the wording strictly does make sense. Like this idea of Silly being able to roll to go into charge from the support line, being able to charge into that front line. I'm just focusing on this one piece because it's clear in my mind and because it's the Silly Brigade, so I love it. And then, after having reached there, being forced to pull back and maybe do it again. Now, obviously, he doesn't have to do it again because he's Cav, he has to get into dress ranks and recover that disorder from the charge. But unless somehow or another he got, and it's possible, hit in a way where he got the unable to retreat, ignore retreat, rallied to normal result, which would then like force one unit to go flying off or something like that, while the rest of the command has to try to go back and regroup. And that's the kind of stuff where you're seeing, I don't know how common it is in this era, but I know it still was happening. I know it happened in the musket and pike era for sure. There are games with special rules for it, and certainly everything earlier, which is the, hey, I'm in a pursuit and I'm in good morale and everything, and I just keep going after the enemy, right? The idea of kind of like less disciplined but high morale forces kind of works into that. And I think it's beautiful that it actually can express that kind of thing every now and then. It's hard. And it may not happen for the right reasons, like the idea that, yeah, it only happens because I was unable to retreat because there's units pinning, units of my own group kind of forcing me to stick where I am. But whatevers. Done my first intentional cheating of the system. Let's talk about it for a moment. Let me put these dice over here because it is the Allied force turn next. Coming over here to this tiny little wing, right? Hey, I said wing this time. These guys spread out, hey, defend against the Cav. If the Cav end up oozing through, might end up cheating to allow them to do so, because it makes sense to me that hitting behind this village would actually work, would actually do something that makes sense, while this is like unable to advance because there's a strong point there. But I also spread Nagel out this way. Now this hex, I would say, is a violation, even though the little line goes through it. It doesn't go through the middle. And this hex is way out of line. And I mean, I'm like basically saying this little dashed line has gone out like this instead. I'm fine with that. I think that is what would happen. You would end up defending against the possibility of attacks again for the same kind of reason, because there's nothing in that wing. There's no way that these forces can come forward and engage. But therefore, this is part of, like, this connects to this wing, and the only way I can do that and maintain the command thing is to change this, the shape of this, and just create a jagged little outline here. These guys, they might end up increasing the size of their wing as well. They just may. And it's not like I don't have enough brigade frontage on this center wing here with 6 brigades in each line to be able to do this. And I just don't feel like the stuff that's back here is really part of the fight between this village and this Cav that's not advancing on them. Don't feel like they have anything to do with each other, whereas there would be the possibility and an absolute reasonable expectation that this wing would simply stop going as far back. Might have to change things if something else happens. Well, that it would stop going as far back from the Allied point of view, but that it would actually extend in from the French point of view because things have fallen back so far. I need to protect this wing. Otherwise, they just march through past each other like ships in the night, and that is just unbelievable, right? That is unacceptable and unbelievable. So I'm going to find me a clip tie or something to indicate this, bend it around a little bit, and show what the new wing structure is by doing that. So I've redefined the boundary of the wing by doing that. All very simple. And I think that maintains a level of sense to the situation. Now, what's going to get complicated is the possibility that the Allied force defines their wing going into there, so that it's not a mutual wing anymore. And that may well happen. And what I'll use then is different colored clip ties or some kind of lines to show where this wing extends into here while this wing extends into here, just depending on the nationality of the, they just have different views of what the wing structure is, instead of accepting and sharing that there's this fixed red dashed line that they cannot cross. Example of something I have to look up, why this is not good enough. So I know there's a rule under the mixed combat, and we're going to have mixed combat here, where something can't cross terrain features in order to attack the other type of unit. Sense told me it would probably be cav can't cross a terrain feature to attack anything, to tell you the truth, but they have absolutely no problem with that. The problem is that infantry can't cross a terrain feature to attack cav, and I think it has to do with the fact that the cav is more mobile, and if you're close enough to charge the cav and scare them away, well, you're not really close enough to have that impact if you have to pay extra movement points to move. So I think that's the consideration there. Because what I want to do is Brogley here is in a position where he can charge and actually hit this infantry because it has an open flank. I can't hit this one, but I could actually hit this one from two different hexes. Even though only one of the hexes has an open flank, it doesn't make a difference. The open flank is okay to do it with either. And I didn't succeed in getting into charge, so I just moved up to be in compliance with the line. Now I've got a bit of a problem here as well. Massenbach here has drifted over the line. I haven't gotten to him yet. When I do, I may have to add another little thing, or I may decide he'll try to stay in compliance and fill in the area that he needs to. But otherwise, I just add a couple more hexes to this to this wing, if that's what I need to do. But I did move Brogley up. That means this wing, for this wing, the reserve is gone, and now all the units that were in the reserve are now the support. Another issue that's not well addressed in the rules, I've got this Airbach unit here, and I was told that this is kind of what's intended. When the line bends, and this line bends, the front is not dependent upon the direct hex grain. Palant is part of the front, is part of the front line of this. If it had been on the straight hex line, me moving Airbach up here would be illicit. But because I see the line is bending here, and I see the distance, Palant is 2 hexes away from here, I feel like 2 hexes would be here, 3 hexes for some freedom. I think I can move airlock up this far because of that. But again, that kind of stuff is just not expressed in the rules, and you end up with a horrible formation if you don't play this way. In this case, yeah, it's not that big a deal. But over in the other one, near Winden, there was like there is here, a massive curve in the line, right? But there, the curve in the line started out as set up within a single wing. And it's just like, wow, that wing is just going to be in real problems if I have to, as the rules seem to imply, but don't directly say, if I have to keep the integrity together based on the hex row itself. Get to another anomalous situation. This Carafa brigade. That moved up into the front line. Now, it doesn't really look like it's in the front line, right? It's in parallel with all these units that are part of the support now. But I'm only 2 hexes away, or 3 here, Whereas if I count here, well, I'm at 3 there. So I actually think I do have to push forward another hex. Fine. I'll do so. But this unit is still not in violation, right? Because he's 2 hexes away. This is 3 hexes away, the way I count it. Well, I mean, the way I'm interpreting how this should work. Otherwise, I would have to, I guess, well, I couldn't go here. That would violate the overlap orders. So I would have to go like this, and then these guys would have to figure out and pull back, right? But they're further from the enemy, so I'm saying this is okay. You know, I thought what I had was okay, but it's not, and I am not going to extend the front for that kind of convenience type situation. I have to feel like there's a real reason the front's extending like it is here, and that's why I'm kind of loath to do it over here with Massenbach, unless I have no other choice, which is that the Allies are pushing me back, and I'm still part of the same wing. Then I feel like the wing boundaries bend. Here, I feel like, look, I had to defend myself, and I wouldn't have to by the rules as written, because these guys couldn't come crashing through here to much effect. They could attack, but and advance in, but then they'd have to pull back and all kind of stupid stuff like that. Whereas I kind of feel like these guys are going to just co-opt that whole area, because there's just no way to penetrate from this direction. Basically had to flip every unit, and I'm not sure why, but I went through them individually. I haven't done the dress ranks yet. There are still some French in dress ranks who have not yet gone, and 1 Allied unit in dress ranks. But I'm going to get to a position that I don't like what's developing here. So this cav, sure, they're being pressed. I don't mind that they're having trouble dressing ranks, going from march to... here I'm under firefight, there's an actual penalty there. So I'm going from march, which has a base of 2, to a 1, so I only have a 20% chance. Here, I had a 30% chance of getting to dress ranks. Instead, I ended up just putting my disordered unit underneath. Did I do that here too? Yeah, that was earlier. So that I'm not just wiped out by infantry attacks. I could back up and give ground, but I don't want to. But this unit is really not being pressed. You could make an argument about this. But it has the same only dress ranks on a 0 or a 1. No, 0, 1, or 2, 30% chance. And it's really like, what else are they going to do? Instead, they're just forced because they're in march as opposed to charge. After you charge, getting out of charge into dress ranks is relatively easy. Charge to dress ranks is a 4. March to dress ranks is a 2. And that means it's really, really hard for a defender, because the defender usually doesn't want to charge, to recover in between attacks. And that gives the attacker perhaps an advantage. Now, in this case, yeah, the attacker comes in with a charge, they dress ranks, they break off the attack, they pull back. There's nothing to reflect the fact that the attack was broken off and that these guys are really not in any danger. Sure, there's some possibility he might turn an attack, and but let's imagine that there's nothing here, okay? Then these guys would still be in no danger and still have the same chance. And I feel like that seems wrong, that the march to dress ranks, it makes sense that when you're under attack, you can't dress ranks very easily. You have an advantage there, actually, because as long as the person who's charging keeps, stays in charge functionality and keeps pressing the attack, they're not dressing ranks, right? They may have a better chance at it, but they have to pull back to do it. You don't. And you actually have the opportunity as the defender to dress ranks in the midst of the fight, which also feels iffy, but I'm willing to accept it as the defender's advantage, whatever, because in 20-minute turns there might be small periods some capability to reform while under fire. But certainly this kind of situation where I'm being given, 20 minutes or more of absolute peace, why am I still disordered in that village? I'll live with it, but I don't like it. I don't like it. Now here, I could have tried to get into charge, and I would have succeeded, but instead I went in from dress ranks to march so that I could reorder my stacks and have stronger units, including one with a first fire, on the top to really sort of mess with and hit with a little bit more impact and have a chance of doing something. Defender, to a large extent, there's no reason to leave dress ranks. I mean, I would have to go into charge to do this if I wanted to attack this exposed flankway on the other side infantry line. But I don't want to. All I want to do is have the most recuperability. So I'm never going to leave dress ranks. This is the opposite of what's going on here. These guys were in march when they were hit, unfortunately. It might make sense for the defender to immediately start putting units into dress ranks. They probably don't want to counterattack. Probably what they want to do is be able to recover their losses. I haven't been doing that unless I had losses or wanted to fall back from a firefight. But I think in terms of the mechanisms of the game, that you actually want to take that gamey action of being in dress ranks for the defense. Now, if you do try to do that right from the beginning, that could just be an indication of discipline and whatnot, whether you've obtained a certain amount of discipline for your defense. But it's not what my mindset did, so I feel like something is anomalous here. Even though maybe it's not, it's just me not having, again, internalized what the mechanisms mean. But I didn't even realize what the mechanisms mean. That you need to be in dress ranks to defend. And that doesn't, it doesn't feel like it's the case because you start the scenario in move orders. Like if I'm ready to receive, I should be allowed to have everybody in dress ranks then, so that it's not a die roll thing coming forward as to, but there's a lot of randomness in things. Again, it might represent how disciplined is the defense, but I've made the choice to have really undisciplined defense in just about all cases. As an example, all my intuition tells me I shouldn't stay in dress ranks. That's not the best way to defend. Well, reforming is not the way you should defend, but there's no penalty for being in dress ranks. None whatsoever, and only advantages. So this unit, it made it into dress ranks. Now it's just going to stay that way for the rest of the game. It's not going to change. And I'm going to start trying to make all my defenders move into dress ranks instead of being in that. What I felt like was more flexible. Now look, if I wanted to say, all right, I'm going to say that this wing just extends out to here and start talking about that kind of stuff and launch an attack into that. But I don't feel like the circumstances warrant being able to loosen my wing restrictions, because there is still a potential threat here that could sneak down if I'm not covering that and all that. And then I won't have a contiguous line. And so regardless of any possible advantage that I might get from going this way, I feel like I'd be violating the spirit of the game too much by twisting the wings in that case. And that's why I don't want to write rules, right? I don't feel like I can write rules to express these on-the-fly type decisions that I have to make. Like that I can't just move this wing out there because it would be advantageous to me to launch, a flank attack at this point. No, I'd be breaking my line. That's no good. And then once you start thinking about things like that, you're like, okay, the rule book that would be needed to express what's going on here and what I desire out of the game, I just don't think it's a plausible rule book for for a published game, right? It's something I almost have to say. I am going to take this system and I am going to modify it on the fly every game as necessary. To take that tack, wow, this didn't charge fully. I don't know where it was charging, but it was charging in either that or that and didn't succeed. And I'm guessing it's the little actual charger, because that can screw up more easily. But very obviously, if you take that kind of tack in terms of how you're going to approach the game and whatnot, you're essentially saying this is no longer a game that you can play competitively. You're like, okay, maybe you can play it 2 players against each other as long as they discuss each modification, you know, each on-the-fly modification and such not. But you can't play it at all competitively. So it becomes either solo play or 2-player play that relies on making agreements to change things on the fly often. Not something that you... On the other hand, I don't believe either of the scenarios are at all balanced. So there's that as well. It may just not be competitive play. Now take this in comparison to the musket and pike games. Same designer, right? Close time period. Similar type of situation. There are battles there that are not balanced, but there are ones that are. And part of that is, look, the boxed sets, you know, each box comes with, I don't know, 4 to 6 battles or something like that. A decent number of different fights that you can put into play. And for whatever weird situation, I'm probably just trying to delay having to figure out what I'm doing with that unit. Because it's really in a fucked up place. This brought me to one of those, hey, it's not about this game, and it's not really my current personal life, but a memory from long ago that for whatever reason, what we were just discussing triggered in me, which was the idea of that I would, when I first started getting into role-playing games, I was already playing war games at that point. One of the things I started thinking of was, wow, I have, like, you know, these ideas for fantasy battles that I want to cover. And sure, there are games like War of the Ring over there and stuff like that. But a lot of the fantasy battles that I would kind of picture would happen in terrain that's, you know, not significantly different from the era, you know, that's projected here. So I had some Civil War, Napoleonic stuff like this, where it would make sense to just use a map from a famous battle or something as terrain for a situation in a fantasy battle or whatever. And I was always playing around with that idea. I don't think I ever really did anything with it. But you know, my thought was, wouldn't that be cool? It's so weird because I was just trying to avoid having to build terrain for minis and all that stuff that I, you know, instead I was like, I could just make counters and I could play out a battle type situation, or I could even use minis to indicate, you know, the composition of the force, like 1 figure per hex or something like that kind of thing. Games do that now. They didn't do that much then. And with, you know, this kind of, like, that way I would have, you know, reasonable, believable, decent looking terrain that I don't have to construct and I don't really have to think about or anything. I can just pull out like Stonewall and play, you know, a fantasy battle on it or something. Anyway, just one of those things that's stuck in my mind. Now I do have to change the battery, and I have to figure out what the fuck to do with that one last dress ranks unit that's there. And I chose to go into charge, and I succeeded. Hit here, drove him back. Hit here, got bounced back. I was able to retreat because this flank was open at the time. You just figure, try to delay, try to delay. That's the best the cav can do there, and try not to cause more problems with routes. That's the end of the line there. Now to something that was straight personal stuff. I stepped on something while I was over, something hard, and it kind of moved. Something hard and little, while I was over trying to get this battery plugged in. And I found something that I'd been missing for quite a while, which is a little footer for my little tiny tripod thing. I had put something else in there, kind of a piece of foamy type stuff that like fit perfectly and worked just fine. But now I happen to find the actual footer that must have fallen off or something, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, real interesting, buddy, real interesting. Okay, and that means routes and cleanup. I don't see anything. What did I do? Good thing that's cav, because that's going to get routed through. I walked into that. Man, that was stupid. Let me not walk into that. Let me leave a clear space for him. Because that was just... I'm trying to fix... Like, often in games, I don't fix fuck-ups like that. But in this game, I feel like I'm struggling so much getting basic mechanisms down that I do fix a lot more than I would in other games. So, yeah. As I was unflipping, I found myself a situation that I don't think I want to try to correct in any sense. This Wolfensdorf was in a position where it was being committed. I mean, I can do a little bit with it. I could do this with it. What I can't do is charge with it. And I made a roll and succeeded, and I'm like, whoa, that's actually a real problem, because these guys might have been able to go afterwards and do something else. But this move here, they probably couldn't have done anything about. They just held position. So that puts them up there, and I don't flip them because I'm just going to unflip. And that gets them out of the support line, and now this becomes the front line. Whatever. So that actually does fix it and doesn't get me in any trouble. But again, seeing those Fs, it's hard, especially when there's some kind of marker on top of it. This one was fine. The others are fine. This one, I just delayed. Didn't want to make that commitment. Wanted to wait and make him go first. Well, this seems like a fair solution. Neither one got anything good out of it. Say though, the situation with being unable to discern what the counters are, whether the F is up or not, all of that. Any rules mistakes that I'm making probably are of less import to the outcome of the game than those kind of fuck-ups, not being able to see things on the components. Certainly on the same scale. Maybe not on the same scale as like strategic planning. Maybe certainly not on the same scale as throwing all my units into dress ranks that are defending. That clearly, that's a huge advantage that overcomes anything in terms of rules errors or you know, misseeing something and having to fix it like this or something like that. But in terms of the rules mistakes, if there are places where I'm interpreting the rule differently from one place to another, or just getting it wrong or something, I have to say, I think they're on about the same level as not being able to discern what the counters are. In terms of both actual effect on play, but also on frustration of play. In fact, maybe worse on frustration of play, which is a real sign. And it's one of the reasons that I'm like so down against Compass games, is because they fuck up something in the presentation every single goddamn game. Like, they don't seem to be able to produce a game that is across the board minimally able to give you the game state the way that other companies do. This is on that level. This is on the level of what Compass fuck-ups are like. And again, just like the Compass ones, it's a completely deliberate decision to represent the units with something that's very hard to see. I, again, don't know about those Fs. Like, there's only so much counter space that you could eat up, and they're already obscuring the type of the unit by being there. So, like, that is not, to me, a bad decision so much as there were no good decisions. There were no good capabilities to do things with that. But I feel like the decision to represent the units the way they did is causing me a huge amount of heartache in terms of playing. After a relatively long-winded turn, it's time for a break, but let's take a look at what we got here. Still static over here. Still pretty static over here. Recovery hasn't happened even. Over here, French are pushing back, forming something up. This is looking, it still doesn't look good for the French. It really doesn't. But yeah, I have another brigade coming over. From the wrong side, but it's not the unit. Like, I would detach this unit from the support line and bring the reserve line over to cover if need be, or just leave it there where it was. That has to do with how tightly packed things are here more than anything else. French covering here, breaking the rules a little bit, but I feel like any common sense understanding of how the battle would develop says that the Allies would push through here if it's not covered, and if it is covered, I have to extend, in order to cover, I had to extend the, because this line just doesn't work, right? Over here, the push hasn't gone that much further. It's like here and here, the Allied advances are slowing somehow. And everywhere else, it's just stasis. And that's all for now. 20 p.m. turn, and we did some artillery fire from over here. We got one hit. Elsewhere, the artillery is mainly moving. This one just unlimbered. I don't know how much help it is against the cav, because the infantry just chases the cav away. But I figure it's better to unlimber and be in position in case some infantry comes up or something. Again, it just, if I get an effective, they can't get out of there. But so that could be useful. And this is within a range that, I could hit those long range guys at least. On to the brigade commands. I misspoke. I don't mean the brigade commands, I mean the wing commands. That's the word I'm thinking of. It's not so much that I'm tired, although it's like, I don't know, daytime now, more or less. I don't know how late it is. But there's nothing I want to do. It's like, so I shouldn't sleep right now because I stayed up most of the day yesterday, napped here and there, but I don't know. Commitment's done. I didn't do as many attempts this time, although I did a fair number, but I didn't get any successes at all, so all we have is this still transferring over. Trying to dress ranks, I'm not sure why, with this unit, or something. I really don't know why I was trying, because it's infantry, it got no advantage. I look at, yeah, I'm tired, I guess I am. But I had to continue with the charge. Now, this unit was in this hex, this one in this hex. They both had to hit the infantry here. This one scared off some cav. It's disordered cav, but that's fine. I don't destroy disordered cav unless I can't retreat. So I don't get any real advantage out of pushing there. But what I couldn't do was scare this cav back and try to open things up. I've got to concentrate on the infantry line. That goes to the one French unit in charge, which is this very unit here, which is part of why I attacked it, but it doesn't really do anything. Although it probably wants to fall out of charge. Now, you can see this guy has fallen over this line. This guy, because of his charge orders, had to slip into this wing. That would be allowable by my understanding of the rules. So I don't really have to do anything yet about that, in the way I did something here. I've managed to get into dress ranks. This unit recovered. Now, technically, I have to call this part of this wing now. I'm not going to do anything there, but the reason is, otherwise I would have had to conform with the wing rather than get all my options under orders. So I would have had to like move up behind this unit or something. I don't know. I'm leaving it as it is. I want them to rally. I don't particularly want to hunt down, something to like circle this and say this is now part of that wing. That feels weird, but like, I could cut down further or something like that, like is done on the other map. But the hell with it. It's an anomalous situation, but I don't feel like I really have to define it the way I did in the last one. Operated on the two wings, and this Bielke here, forced to remain in charge. He drove some cav back. Highest priority, I'm allowed to hit it. And then this unit was up here and had a zero table actually, but bounced off. And then Wilke got his dress ranks and fell back. He's not doing anything with what he was in, so this all makes sense that he wants to do that. Like, it's weird because I was kind of happy that I got firefights because the table is so bad for attacking in here, but I'm also not affecting the enemy. So if I want to win or lose this wing, I have to keep fighting. And I do have more reserves coming. I'm not really thrilled with fighting on this wing, though. To some extent, kind of like this. Maybe I should just stand back and let the French come forward if they want to. Give up their defensive stronghold. And in the last aspect of the battle, of the charging units, over here, Holstein-Beck moved forward to engage the cav. They don't get to attack them yet. I think all their units had to move. I don't know. These guys did engage the cav. They drove a couple of them back. This one took a disorder because the line was solid, and he has a unit under him. He had no retreat opportunities. I screwed up somewhere to allow that to happen. Not a good situation for the French. This led me to thinking about something, a situation that I don't believe is covered by the victory conditions. Okay, victory is assessed here after all the brigades move. It would be possible, let's say, that the Allies rout this entire wing and the French rout this wing. Now, it's really going to be hard for the French to rout a wing, but one of these smaller ones, maybe over here, or this one, which isn't that small, but where perhaps I have some advantages or something, it would be completely possible for both armies to basically lose on the same turn. I think I'd call that and say that both armies kind of fall back and lick their wounds. That seems like the most likely outcome from that kind of situation. It would be really, really rare and really unlikely. I think in both of these battles, for this set at least, I think the attacker has, the defender is the one who's likely to break in any case. And you could say, well, that means, the attacker has the advantage in the battle. Yeah, they probably do, but it's not the only thing. If you made the time span for the battles shorter, like on the extreme case, let's say you made it one turn, obviously the defender would win. So they're trying to give you enough time to finish the battle successfully, but to also give enough time that like the defender might actually hold out and win if delay is sufficient. And it's not really an appealing answer for the defense. Like most games that I play at the tactical level, it feels like both sides have some chance of winning, not night fell and you call that a defender victory simply because they weren't dislodged. I certainly don't feel that way about any other, any of the Civil War Napoleonic games that I handle that are on this same kind of detail. So, and certainly Musket and Pike doesn't have this either. All right, that's it for now. We're on the movement orders. I'm almost out of battery, and like I said, I'm fatigued feeling. I'm not really sleepy, but I don't want to do the fucking thing I have to do in raid, and I don't want to do anything like housework or anything. I never do. Going into a bit of a problem with what I chose to do here, as I'm doing the big pass flips, right? I mean, units are moving a hex or two here and there. Yeah, these guys are doing their transfer, but basically both sides are pretty much trying to delay. I get confused. I see a disordered unit, or I see a flipped over unit, and I think, oh, it's disordered, so I think, oh, I want to dress ranks. I've done that a couple of times. I came up here soon after a nap, not all that soon, a good half hour after I took a nap, and naps are all I'm taking now. Like, I'm not getting full night's sleep. I'm getting 2-hour naps here, there, and everywhere. Probably at least 8 hours a day. Oh, that brings something else up, but anyway, what I'm looking at, this is a support line here, part of this line. I don't have another way to do this. I really don't, because this Oberglau strong point only allows 2 units in the front, and they absolutely need this to be the front. There's no question about that. But it's as though more front is being created in this line. Now, ideally, what I probably would end up doing is shifting this over and up and changing this and making this part of the front of the Hochstadt plan. Ideally. But I don't believe that a force would just ignore its flank, and not defend it. And the size of these, of the different wings, is really based on the expected size, right? Which is, this is kind of the front here, is this area here. And the fact that I'm getting pinched from both sides means to me that something that's a front, something that was support, is almost becoming a front now, or is becoming a front in a sense. And I don't actually see the commanders necessarily giving up this unit. So I think this expresses things better, but because I don't see them giving up this unit to this command, when it's just defending the same stuff, it's just extending the line down. Now, sure, it's connecting to this. It all makes, sort of one kind of sense, but that happens, from wing to wing, essentially anyway. It's the fact that this wing has fallen so far down. The other thing is, and I wasn't going to mention this, but one of the viewers mentioned that for Clash of Sovereigns, which I'm worried because I got something that looked like they're sending me another copy of it, right? Apparently there's a fix kit for it. If they do send that for free, I withdraw a lot of the bad things that I've said about GMT. All right, look, the correction counters, whatever that they put out for other games, I mean, I'm in a halfway point, but if they fuck something up badly enough that it needs a correction kit, I think it's not an unreasonable thing to send out. I remember starting with Here I Stand. That was the first game that I received what was just a straight out little correction kit. It was a set of, I don't know, maybe 10 counters or something, a little mini slice of the counter mix that fixed some issues that they had in their printing. They've had as bad an issue, I would say Border Reavers is an example, as bad an issue with the counter mix. This game is another one where there's a few counters that are fucked up, and then they could give me, a couple extra counters just because the way they print the counter sheet, they have extra room if they're going to spend to replace things. But the yearly replacements don't make a lot of sense. But this sounded like it had cards involved in it and all kind of stuff. So maybe that's what's coming. It's like a more complete thing. Good reason not to play a game when it first comes out, I guess, until people look at it. And this is probably a lower priority for most people who get it, as opposed to something like Clash of Sovereigns, where, this is a new series, got to learn it all and everything, whatever. Clash of Sovereigns is a follow-up on Clash of Monarchs. Over here. And it was more of a big-ticket item, I suspect, than this was. And so you really don't want to piss off those people, right? So we'll see. That would be nice. I was kind of hoping it would be the 18XX game, but I don't see. I did get billed for that, I think, but again, it was $1 less. So I don't think that they would round up on the invoice or anything like that. All right, back to this very tedious task of flipping all the units without doing anything. There are a fair amount of games where you do this kind of stuff, where you're like, yeah, I don't want to do this with this unit. But this one has such a large quantity of units in the support and reserve lines especially, that quite often you just have nothing you want to do until the front pushes forward or gets pushed back or something like that with those units, or anything significant with them. So like the vast majority of the units I'm flipping at this point, and then a little later I have to unflip them all. Of course, flipping takes a little bit of thought because I have to look and see, do I want to move a couple hexes? Do I want to do anything with these guys? I don't know. And I think I found another counter fuck up. This unit here is the greater infantry. On the other side, it has the Saint-Seconde infantry. This is the Saint-Seconde infantry. On the other side, it has the greater infantry. I was looking and I'm like, whoa, wait, Saint-Seconde, Saint something or another, isn't that back here? It is. Oh boy. And that's why I don't trust that some of these commanders have the wrong number on the back. Like, if all the counters were right, I would say, oh, maybe that's intentional and that's meant to say that for brigade activation, for when they're trying to activate brigades as opposed to activate their wing, they have different values. But I don't trust it one way or the other. I don't know what's intended, right? I don't trust the rule book to have explicitly stated one or the other if the counter is as intended. Right? And I don't trust the counters to be right. Finding it almost impossible to get out of the mindset of the way I was playing before, which is, well, for one thing, I kind of screwed up in that both sides kind of ignored that this guy wanted to get into dress ranks before these hit him. But that's fine. That's just me fucking up the, not realizing, I really want to do that. But I'm having real trouble. For example, I take a look again at this Nagel unit, and I'm like, do I want to put it in dress ranks? And part of me says, no, I want to be more flexible. Because it's easier to get into charge. And in the event that these switch over into this command, into this wing, then I might want to go into charge and try to cause issues to that Allied advance that's happening. I don't feel like I can just redefine the wing to allow me to swing up. That feels like a bit too much. That feels like I'm no longer part of this wing. Okay? And again, I just feel like these things, trying to write a set of rules that would encompass all of this with some sort of strictness, all of this flexibility with some strictness, would be almost impossible. And I don't like impossibilities. But yeah, I mean, in other cases, I'm just not doing it, you know? So like, do I really want him? I think I tried with him. But do I really want him in dress ranks? I don't know, maybe. You know, it's better for the defense overall to be in the dress ranks if the enemy is going to hit you. You certainly want to get into dress ranks once the enemy hits you, but that becomes harder if any firefights ensue. So it's better to set yourself up ahead of time. But there are cases, like with the Nagel unit, where you actually really don't. And that's the end of the line for the big, the march order units, I think. I went through every unit and did them all. No big skips or anything. I flipped everything because there were attempts to delay going on, as is usual. And that's going to put me to the dress ranks. I believe it's going to be the Allies first. I think the French had the last unit, which was, I don't know, these guys. Tried to get into charge, couldn't. Said, screw it, we'll just stand. Hey, something happened. These fuggers over here came out of dress ranks into charge, hit Mount Maine, and broke the unit. And that leaves just only this Wolfensdorf as the front line for this section. And it's hard to get things from support to front line. You can only do it one brigade at a time. The fact that like all of this is here, I can't do something that allows me to fall back and say, hey, you're all the front now. Which I'm okay with. I don't think that's terrible. It's just, there's sort of a, wow, there's sure alone out there against a whole bunch of cav coming. Here, I'm kind of excited about this because games are just more interesting when things are happening in them, right? Like, and there's a whole lot of nothing happens in this game. A whole lot of mechanical counter flipping, looking, trying to figure out, do I want to do something? No, I don't. Or, oh, I'll move 2 hexes or something along those lines. And it's just like pretty damn impressive when not only do I get a combat, but one that's actually effectual and has some impact on play. You know, we've got, you know, I've had combats over here where it's like, oh, I push the cap back. Oh, it moves back. You know, great. And I had just one more unit before the end of the line. I don't remember what it was. I think it was this cav over here, which is going to just remain in dress ranks because it's essentially defending. And there's an advantage, well, dragoons. There's an advantage to remaining in that. Sure, I could attack the infantry somewhere, I guess. These guys have a protected flank. Yeah, no, there's nothing I can actually do offensively. So dress ranks makes me sort of like infantry, a little bit more resilient than I would be as cav without the dress ranks. The dress ranks gives me an advantage in that, like, if I get pushed and can't go anywhere, like here, although actually this flank is open, so even though my line seems pretty secure on both sides and I got a unit behind me, this flank here is being protected by the unit underneath, and therefore I can retreat, and therefore, you know, I'm actually in absolutely no danger at all. Fink is not going to move me. Too bad for him. There's a lot of that throughout. And that'll put me to the couple of routed units to move, and they aren't going to cause any damage. And then, you know, it's not as big as the flipping aspect of it, but it comes all at once with no pauses, no thought, nothing. The cleanup and unflip. And much as the game is, you know, trying to expose something that I don't think any other game really has done, and it's a battle that should feel interesting and whatnot, I'm left with kind of this boredom from how little is happening, and fatigue from how long it's taking for nothing to happen. Maybe playing one right after the other is a negative point, but I'm thinking, you know, consider the musket and pike or the great battles of history, where I could play game after game of it, you know, scenario after scenario, and not feel this kind of fatigue necessarily, although eventually it does sort of set in with the sameness of it all. There's just, this is very tedious in a lot of ways. It really is. Anyway, that'll get me to the end of this turn. To the next one. It's break time, and I don't know. Like, you know, there's a part of me that's saying, I should just call this, it's dull, you know, because it really is. I'm interested to see what happens, but it takes so long to develop that, I don't know. The details that this is working with are still like, you know, it's just ending up as this really kind of static push everywhere. And sure, eventually things are going to break. How much longer before the victory conditions are? Oh well, it's not 4 something. It's 6:21 to 40. This is the last turn of the game, when out to there. So plenty of time for the battle to develop still, but it takes so much to do so little each turn that unfortunately I'm kind of becoming of the opinion that maybe this needs to be, maybe covering this battle needs to be a more, to do it correctly in terms of keeping it historically accurate, but also make it fun at the same time. It needs to be a much more abstract system than this. And I don't like saying that, because I want to see the detail. If I was playing this, if I came to a game like this that was much more abstracted, I'd be like, that's kind of interesting, but damn, I wish they would like go into the details. But going into the details, and we're still not, you know, scratching the level of detail that Musket and Pike did. They abstracted a hell of a lot to get to something that was at all playable, and it's still, damn, it's just not engaging me in terms of, like, I don't feel like I'm making a lot of interesting play here or seeing interesting things develop. I feel like, and that's appropriate, right? It may be the same kind of feeling that I have, and I think I brought this up with some of the others, about the old Vietnam game over there, the Victory Games one, which GMT re-released recently, which is just this, wow, I'm doing these things over and over again, and I'm just not seeing much result. you know, the only time I would see results is at the, is it at the end of turn, or is it at the end of, like, I think it's at the end of every 3 turns or 4 turns or something. At the end of every season, you get to roll to see what the population does. And that, you know, in the campaign game. I can't really speak too much to the scenarios for that. I may have fiddled around with a turn or two of one of the kind of smaller, yeah, core size scenarios and that. But yeah, it always just drives me away. Now that's a much, much longer game of that kind of thing. There's these fantastic strategic decisions, and it's kind of why I feel like Hearts and Minds and maybe Fire in the Lake, which I've bought a couple of expansions for, and I'm still not sure I really want to play them. I don't know why. Coin Man. Played a lot of Coin, and it takes a while to get back into. It's why I don't go back to the GBOH stuff. I have a lot of them to play, but that I haven't done yet. But it's like there's the investment to get into it again. But where was I? Those games look at it from more of a purely strategic level, where you're making the big decisions, and the combat and everything is much more abstracted one way or another. In Coin, it's somewhat deterministic. I like Hearts and Minds better, I think, because it feels more like a war game. But the actual combat in it doesn't, you know, I'm not going to say it's Axis and Allies, because it's a different system, but it's got this sort of, that same kind of level of abstraction for the combat, where you're like, you know, I wonder what the detail would be like. Well, when you get to the detail of the Victory Games game, it's like, yeah, that detail is catching a lot of information and giving you a lot of story, and it seems to be doing a fair amount of things right, but actually playing it out is just so tedious. Kind of what I feel with this, at a much smaller scale, though, because I'll make it through this. He just doesn't have a hell of a lot of impact here. These guys fired, no effect here. I got effective fire, but it's against Cav that I probably can't attack or anything. It pins them in place. A few commitments. This one's still ongoing, of course. We're sending an infantry unit over into this central area as a backup. I've got a fair amount of infantry already set up there, but my worry is that it's going to get broken up by the Cav front line, you know, routing through it and all that. That's going to be an annoyance. On the Allied side, we're pushing this Cav forward to hit here. It's not a great solution, but he can hit it because they have open flanks, so hey, let's see. On to the brigades, charges. I'm sure the Allies have the more charges. There are absolutely none on the French side left. This is big. I didn't mention this, a Cav committing to here. And I chose not to send this infantry over. I probably should have, but I'm left with this. I don't know, will I need that infantry over here or will I need it here? The thing is, this wing has a couple more infantry that I can push forward into it. So I probably ought to be committing this here, but I just couldn't convince myself to roll the die. It probably wouldn't succeed anyway. It would have been on a 1, so 20% chance. The way the low chances are one of the very reasons that you should, right? Because you don't want to be in a position where you know you need them with only that kind of low chance. Bielke here can't get out of his charge. Hit here, unit was destroyed. Hit here, got bounced back. The destroyed unit didn't rout me, so I'm still in the way. Kind of like to bring fresh units in, try to whittle away at what's there. The next set over is in this wing. I'm just running down the line because it absolutely doesn't make a difference right now. I might choose left and right here. Once we get to infantry again, there might be some advantages. But only if I'm facing infantry. Facing cav, I really won't be. But here, both Fugger and Cutoffs ended up being able to get into dress ranks, prepare themselves for another charge. What does that mean? Well, if these can't fall into dress ranks, they're going to have problems. We have a line of charging units that all went here. Palanque went first, hit infantry, actually, and got first fire, did some damage, but then bounced off, didn't dislodge the firefighter, do anything useful there. I may have cheated. I may have had to turn and fight that. Oops. Well. Holstein Beck pushed some cav around a little bit. And the Earlville pushed some cav here. This one had to make a check against the cannot retreat and ended up surviving but still disordered. I got a problem though. I get up to this stream and the cav can hold me there indefinitely. I can't budge them. The infantry will not be able to move them beyond any kind of terrain boundary. So cav defending behind a stream, absolutely invulnerable to infantry attacks. And it's infantry that I got there, and it's cav that I got at the front. So there we got absolute stasis if I don't figure something out. Now, the fact that, you know, the line of the river is not a straight line that I can hide behind, and that it's going to expose flanks, and that there's a cav unit in the front that maybe can get there, or maybe I swap some of this infantry out and get some cav there to try to dislodge them. All of that could happen. But of course, you know, we kind of see the cav doesn't really move the enemy cav. That's going to put me to the French with the movement phase. I tend to usually break here, but I think I'm going to do a few of them because, I don't know, I don't feel like napping. I gave it a kind of a try. What I was listening to on video I didn't like, so I ate a sandwich instead. Get my gut fatter. Thinking too hard, I went here and recovered these guys. Great. That opens things up for these to maybe do a charge or something. But for the Allies, it looks like they're on big pass. I couldn't find anything that I really want to do in the front, and there's advantages to forcing the French to try to activate stuff. Either behind the lines. Yeah, this is infantry. It's not going anywhere. Yeah. Exciting happened. The Vigor unit did charge. This one, I wanted to keep some range or something. I don't know why. But it was a long enough charge I actually got momentum. And got a successful hit off the +1 table. Didn't get to hit a second unit, but I destroyed the, I got an eliminated on the Fugger unit, and then press way out in front, and it's like, oh, what? Guys, come back. We've ended up in a problem situation. For the Allies, I triggered Bibra here. Bibra was unable to get a charge. In fact, they couldn't even roll for a charge because they're no longer in compliance. This breakthrough here is forcing them. So here, I'm at range 2 here, fine. This guy's at range 1, okay, great. But these guys are really kind of on the same line, so I think I have to turn and run away. actually wouldn't have been allowed to try to roll for the charge because the enemy is getting too close. To finish out the Allied commands here, another cav unit had to pull back. This one's probably fine. He's far away. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 1, 2, 3. Kras has to bring his forces forward if that support line is going to be where it was. And the French moved this Morcy infantry into place. That's going to take up a position behind the stream as kind of a defensive position in case the cav fight is lost. I'm not going to be able to chase down cav with the infantry to any effective value, but I can take a defensive line there and prevent me from routing in this sector of the battle. Funny, something about the situation here. Let me think if anything exciting happened. Yeah, I did a preventative dress ranks with these guys in the village. That's fine. But something about the situation, just seeing these guys back here, is reminding me of the Portriari in SPQR, when they just, they're not going to get in this battle. They're just going to sit way back there. If they do get in the battle, we're in trouble. There are a whole bunch of piddling around here, getting them all flipped over, except for Belle-Ile. Well, there's a couple of infantry units here that haven't activated. The Allies are forced to start activating units in their front, and Ross makes an attack, and it's completely ineffectual. So there you have that. And what did I do? I screwed up. Fuck. I attacked this thinking it was infantry, I think. I don't know. Because this should have been this flank unit. Fuck. Alright, I gotta fix this. So this unit, it worked fine. I actually think I even did it correctly. The firefight should be here. This unit was a 3 versus a 2. I would have been +1 on the chart compared to what I was at. Which probably would have put me at a 0. The attacker retreats are the same between 0 and -1, so the effect would be the same. Even though I hit a flank. I think, but I'm not sure because no exposed flank. Oh no, you get exposed flanks for being in the village still. So it might have been up to +1. Still the ARs are there. And I would have been hitting it in the flank. That gets to +2. That could have been worse. Also thought okay, let's impose a 1 AR on that instead, so each of these gets a hit. Kind of good news for the French, because they're in dress ranks. They can recover any damage they take, whereas the attackers cannot. And this is especially disturbing with a place like here at Ballancourt, who went into dress ranks in the midst of a firefight. Now they recover from that situation while they're in this firefight. Again, that I struggle with. I feel like maybe that's a mistake in the rules. Maybe there should be something that prohibits you from recovering when you're in a firefight. But maybe not. But as it stands, I'm beginning to think preventive dress ranks is a really, really powerful defensive option. I didn't realize it in Neerwinden, but it's really hard to beat a unit, a brigade or whatever, that's in dress ranks defensively, because they can just recover. They don't, especially if they're playing for time, the way the French are here, the way the Allies would be in Neerwinden. I think you might be able to just delay the game forever. Now, my feeling was the attacker had the edge in both games, but that's not going to be the case if this is an invulnerable tactic, right? And I think it's close to that. It's not absolute. Look, the chart can cause greater greater effects. It can also cause retreats and whatnot that you can't recover from. You lose ground. So I don't think it will, but it is a major edge in favor of the defense that I did not use during Nearwind, and I'm beginning to use here. And the French had a couple remaining pieces to fire off. I think that puts it on the Allies to do the first of the dress ranks. They don't have a lot of units. They have 2 in dress ranks that they can utilize here. The French have a fair number of them. Getting to one of those, this Scheckendorf. I was going to just march him straight up. In a lot of ways, that feels like the right thing to do. But this threat means that I'd be, lined up against flanking fire and whatnot. I don't want to deal with that. So yeah, I got to extend my line, and I got to figure out how to get something up here that can do something. Now, unfortunately, the remainder of my forces are Cav. Ideally, what I'd like to do is get some Cav in here to hold the line here so these guys can move forward and fight. I need infantry to break across the river against this infantry, or even, well, the Cav line I need Cav for. Right? The Cav behind the river is horrible. I can't cope with that. And I really think that if the French take the more aggressive defense at the beginning, they're in a much, much better position because they can be right up at this line and take advantage of that bonus river. I think they're deploying. So I think if you want to try to make the game a little bit closer, one of the things that can definitely help is to give the French that option rather than their historical deployment. What does it do here? Not nearly as much. The stream isn't going to do as much. Cav versus Cav, they're going to get punched back anyway by the weight of the enemy Cav. But defending this river line, wow, that looks impressive to me. And that would actually give these guys a reason to be fighting, trying to pound whatever's defending the river line here. I got more dress ranks to do, but I also have a battery to swap. So this is the situation we ended up with. Still stasis over here, still stasis over here. Honestly, stasis all through here. Pretty much stasis through here. A little bit of movement here, but that's it. I'm opening up a space that somebody could come in, but I think I need to swap a Cav and sweep it in here because I need infantry to get through this. Not sure how to break this line. It seems to be holding pretty well. This is open for a lot of possibilities because it's still a Cav versus Cav sector where the advantages don't accrue quite as heavily to the defender. Well, they don't at all. The mass of this Cav should overwhelm this eventually. This is where I'm expecting the breakthrough. I'm not necessarily here, but there is a weakness to the French line, which is these Anlezi Cav here. They're in a position where they could disrupt the French infantry, and that could end up causing a serious problem of some sort or another. Because they're in front of the French infantry. I don't want them there, but I don't have a way to get them out of there except a command to rotate them, and that's going to be painful. I have to move the infantry, give them a space, let them curl through, and that might open up an opportunity for an attack to go through. So I just don't see any solution to these guys, except maybe they just vaporize. But if they vaporize, they create routers, and those are going to create a disruption as well. So that Cav in front has really been the curse of the French position here. But there you have it. Now I've got a nice infantry line that can't be penetrated, easily. right? At least not by, so the problem for the Allied forces is they've got worn out infantry in the front that wouldn't really be able, that's not really able to pummel its way through any infantry. It's not really able to do much against the cav either. It chases it, the cav comes back. Then I've got a whole bunch of cav behind it, which, you know, if I was hitting infantry with infantry, it might be busting up the infantry line enough that a segment of cavalry would be useful. And then I've got the infantry as the final line, the triarii as I put them. Just, yeah, it's actually mixed. There's some cav back there too. But those would be really helpful in terms of backing up the infantry. We saw that at Neerwinden. Here, I really am despairing of the possibility that this might just end up making it to that 6 o'clock hour. I'm already in, you know, I'm already in the 3 o'clock hour. When did it start? Noon? Something like that? Yeah. So, you know, I'm a third of the way through the battle, and I'm beginning to feel frustrated with the idea that, yeah, I just don't think I can get any purchase. I mean, I'm just not moving the enemy anywhere. All right, let's send this one up.